Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Neeru Tandon from Department of English, VSST College, Kanpur. We are discussing paper English Language Teaching, popularly known as ELT. In it, we are discussing language skills, and the second language skill, that is known as speaking, is being discussed in this particular module. In this paper on ELT, we are trying to identify the performance and areas of problems in the process of learning of these four linguistic skills of English language. This module is based on second skill that I have already told you is speaking. Now, what are the learning objectives of this particular module? I wish that a student should identify the communication strategies adopted by the L2 learners whenever they find linguistic gap, and while they encounter the problems during the process of learning the oral communication. To identify the inter and intralingual communication strategies adopted by the students while making oral communication and to evaluate their speaking skills. To suggest remedial measures to improve all the four skills of English. Now, whenever we talk about LSRW, just to repeat it, that listening is the oral comprehension, speaking is the oral production, while reading is the written comprehension and writing is the written production. So these receptive skills like oral or written are always developed before the productive skills. Speaking as a productive skill is the oral mode. It, like the other skills, is more complicated than it seems at first and involves more than just pronouncing words. Speaking is not only just to recognize the letters A to Z. Speaking is not just the sounds that you understand. Speaking is something more than that. It is the process of building and sharing meaning through the use of verbal and non-verbal symbols in a variety of contexts. It is said by Mitchell, I quote, that speech is an activity, whilst language is the structural pattern of system we use to convey our message in speech. The pattern of the language exists of words and of the structured relationship between words and phrases, which is known as grammar, unquote. To define speaking is the delivery of language through the mouth. That is the simplest definition, that we use mouth and we deliver a particular language, that is known as speaking. Now, what is the need for teaching speaking skills? All of us can speak, but here we are concerned with teaching of speaking skills in terms of the second language, that is English. When we speak English, so there is the need that how to speak English. So there is a need of teaching that particular drill. So addressing people in English, that requires teaching. Conducting conversation through telephone, making oral presentations, public speaking, reporting, negotiating, clarifying, problem solving, or expressing your thoughts. You need English as far as ELT is concerned. Now TS, that is teaching speaking, it is the most important skill among other skills. You can create or build a relationship with the help of this skill. Learners' judgment and self-evaluation is also based on their speaking. It is a tough job for teachers to engage students to speak because there are some barriers and affective filters. You can write or read or learn grammar or listen individually, but when you cannot speak with self-esteem, so teaching speaking needs more consideration. In most of the areas you will find the coaching centers like for spoken English, like spoken English classes are there. Why spoken English? More of the spoken English and less for other skills, because this is the thing that everybody wants and this is the thing that is the most difficult to master. What are the various approaches in teaching speaking? Teachers in textbook, they make use of a variety of approaches ranging from direct approach focusing on specific features of oral interaction like turn taking, topic management, questioning strategies, and then to indirect approaches like create conditions for oral interactions like through group discussion, task work, or other strategies. We'll discuss this task-based approach in oral communication in an academic setting in India as an example that is said by Richards. Now, what are the speaking situations? Interactive speaking, that is face-to-face conversations and telephone calls, in which we alternatively listen and speak and listen. We speak, we have a pause, we want to listen something and then we again speak. Partially interactive means situations where listeners are there but they are passive. For example, when one delivers a speech in front of the live audience. Non-interactive, where situations are there such as when recording a speech or lecture for a broadcast on television, or you can say e-text or recording a video or something like that. One speaks for the listeners but presence of listeners are not noticeable. So what is this speaking skill that we want to master? Speaking and the art of communications, it is known as the productive skill, and good speaking skills is the act of generating words that can be understood by listener in the same way with the same motive that you have while speaking. A good speaker is clear and informative in his speech. Now, sometimes we feel that someone is a very good speaker while the other is not. Some can develop the speaking skills to a great level, but some they are lacking behind in their professional and personal life because of their poor speaking skills. What are the reasons for those poor speaking skills? Lack of curriculum emphasis on speaking skill. Most of the curriculum depends upon the writing skills, that you will be judged whatever you wrote in your answer books. So nobody is judging you how well you speak. Teachers limited English proficiency. Most of the area you will find that even teachers, they come in the classroom, dictate some notes, tell you something, okay, these are the questions important for the exams, okay, you just cram them and reproduce them. This is all the teaching consists of. Then you cannot develop the speaking skill in such classrooms. Class conditions do not favor oral activities. They don't have time. They are good. Teachers are good, but they don't have time. There is a pressure to complete the syllabus, so they cannot do that. Limited opportunities outside the classroom to practice the speaking skill. Even teacher told you how to speak. Even he gave you permission to speak in the classroom. But what happened once you are out of the class, you don't have atmosphere at home or with the peer group to speak, to practice, then also the poor speaking skills remain. Examination system, I told you, does not emphasize much on oral skills other than the Viva or something like that in the PG classes. Now, researchers, they gave tips to improve English speaking skills. The 5 main tips are: don't worry about making mistakes because you will, and be patient. This is not a one-day process. Don't worry. You are committing mistakes, commit it. But realize that mistake. And after realizing, naturally you will rectify those mistakes in the next trial. Talk slowly and carefully. The mind is at work at that time also. Restrict yourself to simple sentences until you gain confidence. If just you are going to start learning the speaking portion and you start embellishing your speech, if you start decorating your sentences while putting more and more of figure of speech, then what will happen? You will be confused. You won't be able to master the language. Watch English movies and shows. Carefully observe how Proficient speakers of the language pronounce words and frame their sentences. What are the various, in spoken English, there are some sentences are no need to speak them. Like, did you understand? Didn't you? So no need to ask. These are the inferences, these are the ways of spoken English. Somewhere they are different from the written one. So you are supposed to understand them. Communicate with your friends, relatives, and anyone with regularity. Many online sites offer you the opportunity to voice chat with another user. You can use that. This is an effective way to practice. The more you communicate in English, the better your speaking skills will be. Read good articles, good books, magazines of your choice. Learn new words every day. When you hear a new word, try to find its usage, synonyms, antonyms, so that you can master that particular language. Then keep the listener in mind, whom you are addressing, to whom you are talking to. Keep messages short and simple. Be considerate of others' feelings. Don't speak something that can create reaction at the same time. Be open and honest. Respect the listener. Be positive. Check to see if your message is being received or not properly the way you want to. Now, what are the strategies for developing speaking skills? Students, they often think that the ability to speak a language is the product of language learning. But speaking is also a crucial part of the language learning process. Effective instructors teach students speaking strategies like using minimal responses, recognizing scripts, using language to talk about language that they can use to help themselves expand their knowledge of the language and their confidence in using it. These instructors help students learn to speak so that the students can use speaking to learn. Operating minimal responses, what do we mean by that? Language learners who do less talking because of not being confident should be encouraged to participate by building up a stock of minimal responses that they can use in different type of exchanges, like predictable, often idiomatic phrases that express understanding, agreement, doubt, and other responses that you can pre-plan. Now, comprehending scripts. Situation for communications are associated with a predictable set of spoken exchanges. A script like greetings, you are going to meet someone, you will have to greet. So it's better that you learn how to greet someone. So who is the person you are going to greet? You are supposed to know it. If he is elder, your way of greeting may be different. If he is a young one or the colleague, so you should know beforehand. So invitation, other functions, and are influenced by social and cultural norms, often follow patterns or scripts. So you should be ready for them beforehand. So do the interactive exchanges involved in activities such as obtaining information and making a purchase. In these scripts, communication between the first speaker and the other can often be anticipated. Like if I am going to purchase something in a store, I know what kind of a store it is. So I can beforehand just think about it, what I am going to tell to the person concerned. If I am going to a vendor who is just selling the vegetables, then what I will speak will be different from the vendor who is selling the phones. Using language to talk about language. Language learners are often too embarrassed or shy to say something or anything when they do not understand another speaker, or when they realize that a conversation partner has not understood them. Instructors can give students strategies and phrases to use for clarification and comprehension check. Now, there is a comment about speaking skill, speech and spoken language. These are three things. Speaking skill, that is one thing, and particularly when you give that speech, the second thing, and what people think about your spoken language, that is another thing. Burns and Joyce in 1997 said, He commented upon the nature of speaking in the following words. I quote, "Speaking is an interactive process of constructing meaning that involves producing, receiving, and processing information. Spoken language has wider range of functions to perform than the written language. They start from casual, spontaneous conversations, ending with formal speeches, and so on. Written language tends to serve rather specialized functions at the formal level." Unquote. Speech is the first and foremost form of communication. It occupies a predominant position in enlightening the minds of the people. Now, while speaking, there is one more factor that affects, that is whether the speaker is monolingual, bilingual, or multilingual. His speech, his quality of his speech, the use of words by him are being affected by all these things. A monolingual cannot express his views other than the L1. If he wants to become a bilingual, he should learn a language in addition to his L1. The additional or second language may be learnt in a school atmosphere or in society where it is used in real communication. Acquiring spoken mode of an L2 is different from that of L1. If an L2 user has linguistic skills to steer the language fluently with the native speaker of that language, he may be considered as an actual speaker of that language, otherwise he is not. Now, there are some micro skills that are involved in speaking. Like the speaker has to pronounce the distinctive sounds of a language clearly enough so that people can distinguish them. This includes making tonal distinctions, use stress and rhythmic patterns, and intonation pattern of the language clearly enough so that people can understand what is said. There is one more thing, like punctuation levels. You don't say after a sentence full stop, but you just express that by the gap you take. You don't say comma or any other punctuation mark, but while speaking you should be able to make it clear to the speaker that you mean what. Use the correct form of words. This may mean, for example, changes in the tense, case, or gender. Suppose you say I was going and you mean that I am going, the things will be different and the listener will not be able to comprehend what you really want only because of the tense that you used wrongly. Put words together in correct word order. Now there is one more thing, avoidance. Sometimes we avoid what? We avoid speaking. If anybody avoids speaking, why? So let us think about avoidance. If students avoided speaking or talking with the researcher in English, reasons are there. Syntactic avoidance. That sentence avoidance is a strategy adopted by the learners to conceal their linguistic inadequacy. Upon questioning, the student has given one word answer instead of constructing the whole sentence or giving complete answer as mentioned. Like, suppose the teacher asked, "Did you understand the lesson well?" He'll say, or rather, "Yes, ma'am." That is all. So that is, instead of answering that, "Is there any problem?" he may answer in yes or no, instead of telling about the problem or discussing the problem in detail. So why? Because he wants to avoid speaking. There is semantic avoidance, like learners evade from communicating a given content for which appropriate target language rules and forms are not available to them by talking related concepts which may presuppose the desired content. The samples indicate that the students initiated to speak on a topic, but while they face difficulty in the process of communication, they use sounds like I'm thinking. They just take their time. They fill the gap by using this and various other sounds as per their culture or their society. And then L1 words also. Key, that is very usual words for Hindi speaking people. I was thinking ki, I will tell you later on. This key, this is again another thing. Then again they continue their speech. So the use of fillers indicate the learner's mental search. After getting linguistic elements and information from their mental dictionary, they continue their linguistic behavior. This is another type of peculiar strategy adopted by the learners to fulfill the ontogenic linguistic developmental gap they face in the process of communication. In certain contexts, the learners use the sound, I told you, or alone without L1 words as a gap filler as indicated. Just some examples. In some cases, instead of fillers, the learners take long pause. The listener waits that they should come forward and speak and complete. It can be seen explicitly in their linguistic manifestations. I don't like to speak more. In this way, the speaker is buying time for himself. I fly away. I control of. I can take control of myself. So these kind of things, what they show that somewhere the speaker is avoiding speaking, particularly because he is not confident and because of certain other misplacing of the content. The dots in the samples suggest the long pause and then the learners continue the sentence or passage after getting the clues. So both the fillers, this happens basically when the speaker is using the grammar translation method. He is translating within himself. He is thinking in Hindi and then translating it in English and then speaking. So it takes a good time. So fillers as well as long pause signify the learner's mental searching process for apt words or linguistic elements. Usually it is called buffering. Some processes are there when they say different form of plurals like man and men, but they use men's are coming there. Yeah, man's are coming there. So that is lack of knowledge, lack of proper teaching and other things. Now literal translation that I told you, grammar translation method, that is also one form that why the problem occurs, and they use this particular form like fillers and other things to avoid. This is also known as self-repairing. It is another strategy being adopted by the learners. Whenever they realize that there is something incorrect in their speech, this is at the beginning level most of the time, that they say something and they feel no, they are wrong somewhere. So they try to repair themselves at that very particular time. They felt they have gone wrong somewhere during the execution of the sentence, and so they adopt this particular strategy. Like, I will take more time and hard word for doing self-correcting or completing. No, this is what I mean. This is the best thing to say. No, what I mean. They want to explain that whatever they said previously is not the correct thing. So by saying what I mean, they will explain and make it more clear, and they will self-correct themselves. Now repetitions. I'm 18, 18 years old. That is something again. The repetitions, voice reduction, they will say so slowly, so softly that it will be difficult for listener to understand. So this voice reduction is also the strategy for avoidance. Then word coinage, they will just coin their own word with the help of the mother tongue. Then language switching. While speaking in English, they will switch some words or some sentences, they will use Hindi or their native language, and then they will come again to the English. Then assessment of his speaking skill. That is one thing. That assessment can focus on the sound of speech that people use to create an image of themselves to others. By using speech and pausing and variations in pitch, volume and intonation, they also create the texture of that speech. Then their speaking skill can be assessed on the base of their pronunciation. because to be an effective communicator, one's pronunciation should be accurate, otherwise it will adversely affect comprehension. It's very common that people misplace sir and sure. That creates very bad impression. If I say impression, then what will happen with the word? It is impression that sure should be there and it should not be sir or should. So interactive efficiency, it can be assessed by students' use of stress and intonation to highlight important phrases or his ability to suggest a special meaning. I will like to give a clue for those who genuinely cannot just use this sir and sure in the proper places. With this, if you are having any difficulty in just saying sure, I am giving you one mantra. It is real mantra that way. This is known as Shani Deva mantra. Om Sham Shanishchiraya Namaha. If you just practice it without any gap, Om Sham Shanishchiraya Namaha, Om Sham Shanishchiraya Namaha, Om Sham Shanishchiraya Namaha, what will happen? Your habit, your tongue, your mouth movement, your muscles, they will be trained for this particular thing, and Shani Bhagwan will also be happy with you. So please, you can try that and just see the difference. Now there is grammar also. The grammar that is evaluated in speaking should be specifically related to the grammar of speech. There is a movement from making many errors to a few errors. Proficiency in delivering formal and informal talks, the use of vague words and effective use of generic words is the hallmark of a speaking interaction. Fluency and then non-verbal behavior, that should be assessed for finally making the final judgment about the speaking skills. To sum up, that speaking skills and communicative competence, they are very much interlinked, and so while just making yourself fit for speaking English in a better way, you should try to understand, listen first, and then discourse competence, grammatical competence, sociolinguistic competence, strategic competence. Try to pay attention towards all these things, and then you will find that speaking English is not a difficult thing. Don't be scared. Don't feel that you cannot. Don't feel that there is something, some superhuman will come and do that. No, anybody can do that. Only just invest some more time, some more attention, and you will be able to have mastery over this language as well. So keep speaking, keep learning. Thank you for visiting EPG Pathshala.